Hello everyone, Johnny Depp, the enigmatic actor whose name has become synonymous with eccentric brilliance, misunderstood artistry, and a decades-long battle between public perception and private truth, has finally broken his silence in a way that feels less like an interview and more like a deep emotional excavation, revealing not scandal or shock, but the profound, painful, liberating truths people have suspected all along. Truths about Hollywood's cruelty, the burden of fame, the agony of being misjudged, and the quiet resilience that kept him alive through storms designed to destroy him. And as he begins to speak, not through the filter of gossip sites, courtroom soundbites, or paparazzi headlines, but through his own reflective, deliberate voice, the world suddenly sees a man who has spent years carrying the weight of narratives he didn't write, battling accusations he didn't choose, and surviving a public dissection no human being should ever endure. He speaks not in anger, but in exhaustion, describing how the industry he once loved slowly became a battlefield where he fought for the right to exist without being portrayed as a monster or a myth, confessing that what hurt him most was not the headlines but the silence of people who once called him a friend, the executives who distanced themselves at the first sign of controversy, and the machine that treated decades of artistic contribution as disposable the moment it became convenient to erase him. Depp admits that for a long time he felt like a ghost in his own life, drifting from set to set, stage to stage, trying to outrun the noise by drowning himself in characters, music, and creativity, yet always feeling the invisible pressure of judgment pressing against his chest like a constant reminder that he was being watched, measured, and misinterpreted. He talks about how the world suspected he was struggling with trust, with heartbreak, with the emotional toll of living under a microscope, and how for years he hid behind humor, flamboyant costumes, eccentric roles, and a carefully curated detachment because vulnerability had become too dangerous in a world that weaponizes weakness. He reveals that fame, which once felt magical, eventually became a prison where everything he said was twisted, every gesture analyzed, every expression misread, and every relationship reduced to tabloid fodder. But what he suspected, and what he now openly confirms, is that the world is far more willing to believe a lie than to accept a complicated truth. He finally explains the emotional toll of losing major film projects, watching his reputation collapse in real time, and realizing that in Hollywood, loyalty is a myth, and silence often speaks louder than truth. Yet beneath the pain, Depp admits something even deeper, that the people who quietly supported him, the fans who refused to abandon him, the friends who stayed when it was easier to walk away, are the reason he survived, the reason he kept fighting, the reason he found his voice again. He reveals that the past several years forced him to rebuild himself from the ground up, not as a celebrity but as a human being learning how to breathe again. He rediscovered his love for painting, music, writing, and the simple act of waking up without fear of headlines waiting to ambush him. He confesses that he suspected the world would eventually see who he truly was, not the caricature, not the rumor, not the villain or the saint, but a flawed, sensitive, deeply creative man who never fit the mold Hollywood tried to force him into. And now, as he speaks with a clarity that feels like the ending of one story and the beginning of another, Depp reveals the truth that everyone always suspected. He is not unbreakable, he is not invincible, he is not the mythical rebel Hollywood crafted. He is a survivor of an emotional war that almost cost him everything, and now that he has reclaimed his narrative, he is ready to return to the world not as a wounded icon, but as a renewed artist. His message is not one of vengeance, but of rebirth, a reminder that no matter how loud the noise becomes, truth eventually finds its way through, and that sometimes the greatest comeback is not a blockbuster film or a chart-topping performance, but the courageous act of telling the world who you really are after years of letting everyone else decide for you. And as Depp closes this chapter with gratitude, humility, and a quiet strength, audiences around the world finally understand the revelation they suspected all along, that behind the chaos, the controversy, and the relentless scrutiny was a man fighting for dignity, justice, and the right to be seen as he truly is, a man whose silence has finally shattered, leaving behind not scandal but truth, not bitterness but resilience, and not a fallen star but an artist reborn. Thanks for watching.